Three women invited me upstairs, and I swear to you, none of us had the slightest idea how much that night would change the way we looked at each other or ourselves. I wasn't even supposed to stay long. You know how it is, you drop by, maybe a drink, maybe a laugh, then head home. But time slips away when the air feels right, and down there in that cozy little apartment, with wine bottles half finished and soft music curling around every conversation, the air was heavy in a way I didn't recognize at first. Julia caught my eye first, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she carried herself like someone who didn't need to compete for space. People just moved around her, gave her room like it was the most natural thing. Claire, though, she was all sparks, filling every corner of the night with her energy, hands flying when she talked, eyes daring you to keep up. And then there was Emma, quieter, sharper somehow, leaning back, watching, sipping slow like she was waiting to decide what to do with the night. That balance, three women, three energies, was already pulling me deeper before I even noticed that it happened so simply. Julia tilted her head toward the stairwell, voice soft, like she was letting me in on a secret. You should come upstairs with us. Claire, grinning, piled on, teasing about bad chairs and better wine. Emma, she didn't say much, just nodded, that small secret smile of hers making me feel like I was already halfway to yes. And I'll admit it, my pulse was jumping. Because it wasn't about the wine, wasn't about the view, it was about whatever door was about to open upstairs. So I followed them. Up the creaking stairwell, my heart racing like I was walking into a test I didn't know I'd signed up for. And the loft, it was another world. Wide open, city lights spilling in through tall glass, the scent of sandalwood tangled with something floral. It was warmer, more deliberate. Julia moved through the space like she owned the air itself. Claire brushed past me close enough to graze my hand. And Emma just stood there in half shadow, eyes pinned on me like she was peeling back every layer I tried to keep hidden that we sat, or at least they made me sit, wrapped me in the rhythm of their presence. Julia calm, poised in her chair, her silence weightier than most people's words. Claire right up against me, knee brushing mine under the blanket, her laugh bright, but her touches purposeful. And Emma, close now, her quiet questions landing heavier than any speech. What do you like most about this city? She wasn't really asking about the city, I knew that. Each of them tugged something out of me. Julia pulling the steadier parts of me to the surface, Claire daring the playful parts to come alive, Emma digging for truths I usually kept buried. And you know what? It wasn't conflict, not competition, it was harmony. Like three currents swirling into one tide. The twist came on the balcony. Julia called me over, her hand grazing the small of my back like an anchor. Claire draped a blanket around my shoulders, her fingers trailing heat down my arms. Emma stood in the doorway, watching like a judge, like a mirror, before stepping closer, murmuring, "You look caught." And she was right, I was caught. Between Julia's calm gravity, Claire's teasing fire, Emma's piercing quiet. But here's the thing, it wasn't about choosing one. It was about realizing they had chosen me, and maybe, in some strange way, chosen each other too. Back inside, it only deepened. Every glance, every brush of a hand became electric, meaningful, a quiet weaving of something bigger than words. At one point, Emma leaned in, whispering, "Do you always let people this close?" And I couldn't lie. I shook my head. Not usually. But that night, yeah, that night was different. By midnight, the loft felt like the center of the universe. Glasses forgotten, music gone, the city humming below while we sat suspended in our own circle. Julia finally spoke what we were all thinking. "You know this isn't ordinary." Claire squeezed my hand. Emma rested her palm on my shoulder, and in that silence we all agreed without speaking. It wasn't ordinary, but ordinary had nothing to do with it. Julia reached out, laying her hand over Claire's knee, that one small gesture pulling us tighter, binding the moment. And I realized it wasn't about division, wasn't about lines. It was about presence, about being fully there, all four of us, letting the night take its shape. The final moment, God, I can still see it like a movie frame. We were by the door, nobody willing to end it. Julia's hand pressed against my chest. right over my heartbeat, steadying it like she was reading me without words. Claire's fingers slipped through mine, playful squeeze, her energy softening into something truer. And Emma, silent as always, leaned her head on my shoulder, her breath warm, her weight grounding me. Together they formed a circle, not a trap, not a cage, but a shelter. And I knew then, with absolute clarity, that I wasn't walking away from this. From them. Oh, maybe it wasn't ordinary. Maybe it wasn't something you could define or explain, but it was real in its own quiet, unconventional way. And maybe that's what love, or something close to it, really looks like when you strip away all the rules people try to force on it. Tell me, would you have stepped upstairs that night? Or would you have walked away from something you couldn't quite name? Because me, I'm still standing in that circle, and I'm not sorry. Now I want to know, what do you think? Was this right? Was it wrong? Or was it something in between that only the people inside it could ever understand? Share your thoughts. Tell me what love or truth looks like to you. Because stories like this don't end with one voice. They live in the way we all carry them forward. The thing is, nights like that don't just disappear when the sun comes up. They stay lodged under your skin, shifting the way you see yourself and the way you read others. And the morning after wasn't the cliche you'd expect. No half regrets. No awkward shuffle toward the door. Instead, there was this strange calm, like we'd crossed some invisible line and none of us were pretending it hadn't happened. Julia was already awake. Of course she was, hair pulled back, moving around the loft with that effortless grace, pouring coffee into mismatched mugs like she'd been preparing for this moment her whole life. Claire stumbled out from under the blanket, still laughing at nothing, her energy somehow softer but no less contagious. And Emma, she was by the window, quiet as ever, watching the city turn gold with dawn. Her profile sharp against the light that I sat there at the edge of the couch, half wrapped in yesterday's warmth, realizing that I wasn't sure who I was in this story anymore, because each of them had reflected back a different part of me I didn't even know was waiting to be seen. Julia caught my eye, sliding a mug toward me, her voice low. You okay? Simple question, but loaded, because okay didn't even begin to cover it. Claire stretched, stole a sip from my cup without asking, smirking like it was hers all along. He's better than okay, she said, and I couldn't argue. Emma finally turned from the window, her gaze steady as ever, and whispered, he's changed. And damn it, she was right. You know what I mean? There are nights that just dissolve by morning, and there are nights that carve something permanent into you. And I could feel this one etching itself deeper with every sip of coffee, every glance exchanged across that loft. The funny part is, the world outside kept going, horns blaring, people rushing. The city never cared what had just unfolded in that little pocket of light and silence. But inside, everything was different. None of us named it. None of us dared to put it into words. But it was there, like a secret pact stitched between us. And maybe that's the twist no one sees coming. That sometimes love doesn't look like the movies, doesn't choose just one, doesn't follow the script people hand you. Sometimes it's messy and layered and alive, and it asks you to sit in the discomfort of it until you realize the discomfort is exactly where the truth breathes. I didn't walk away. Not that morning, not even when I thought I should. And even now, when I replay it, I can still feel Julia's steadiness, Claire's fire, Emma's quiet gravity, all three currents pulling but never tearing, carrying me somewhere I didn't know I wanted to go to. Oh, let me throw it back to you. If you'd been there, if you'd stood in that stairwell with your heart racing, would you have followed them upstairs? Or would you have played it safe, walked out into the night, never knowing what you'd missed? Yeah, that's the question that still lingers, the one I can't shake, and maybe the one you can answer for yourself.